Wedding planners of Reddit, what is the biggest Bridezilla moment you've witnessed? I had this client book me for a day of 2 weeks before the actual wedding. I regret taking it to this day. She had no transportation plan to take her home at the end of the night. I asked her repeatedly what her plan was and she told me she just wouldn't drink and planned to drive to her honeymoon spot. She never told me where it was even though I kept asking. Fast forward 2 weeks. A massive tornado just went through the DC VAMD area the day before her wedding and power lines and trees were blocking every entrance to the highway to her wedding in the boonies of Maryland. I got up early to deal with the issues at the venue. Like no electric on a 100-degree day. I get a call from her around 6 AM saying she realized she needs transportation now. Fine, I'll find it. One last question. Where is this mystery honeymoon spot? Oh, hours away in West Virginia. I call every DC and Maryland-based limo company and beg them to find someone to drive into the Maryland countryside at 11 PM and then take them to West Virginia. Finally someone relented and I called the bride to tell her the price. Complete freaking meltdown. Well, guess what? You request that at the last minute. You're going to pay whatever they want to charge you. The wedding itself was a complete shitshow. The bride hated her hair and makeup and made it very well known to me, even though she had personally booked the stylist. As it was 100 degrees and blazing July sun, the original unshaded area was going to be terrible for the ceremony. I suggested we move it for her comfort and the comfort of her guests to the beautiful area with a centuries-old tree. She refused, but as guests arrived they did nothing but complain. I decided to say frick it and move the ceremony to make everyone happy. It was a 1-hour traditional Jewish ceremony and in no good mind would I let people suffer in the sun. After the ceremony, I had to wait outside the bridal suite while the couple had a bedding ceremony. Something I never want to witness again. Said ceremony went way over, thus extending cocktail hour and shortening the reception. The bride freaked out that she lost out of dancing time because of it and blamed it on me. At the end of the night during cleanup, the mob started throwing decor in her car rather than let my team do the loadout. As soon as she left, I noticed my emergency kit was nowhere to be found. I called the mob and she claimed she never saw it, even though it was next to the decor we had started to pile up. The next week I get a call from the venue saying they saw a car throw a bag out of their window onto the steps of the venue and then speed away. Alas, it was my bag and I had to drive over 90 minutes to go fetch it, even though the mob and bride live super close to me and at my address. But to top it all off, I got heat stroke and my poor assistant had to drive us home at midnight. That was painful to read. Like, feelings pain, not eyeball pain. What a shitshow, definitely. And then some after the shitshow. Last weekend a bride strides into a gorgeous rented chapel 4 hours early, while 30 ppl are praying, in her super short makeup robe. Freaks out because a one table was not set up at that moment. Picks up a chair in front of everyone and throws it at a trash can. Yep. Now this is a Bridezilla moment. Bridesmaid, not a wedding planner. The bride had a complete emotional breakdown because the purple monogrammed napkins she ordered were a little too bluish. She also spent the last half of her bachelorette party crying and complaining that not enough people were there. LPT, a great way to make people who came to your party feel good is to complain that there aren't other people at your party. My cousin married a vapid idiot. The night before the wedding at the rehearsal she figured out the flower girl had the same shoes as her, in a much smaller size. She flipped her crap at 9 PM and made the mother of the flower girl buy different shoes for her before the ceremony. That's what happens when you buy your shoes from Payless. Not much of a selection in white. Not a wedding planner, but at my sister's wedding, part of the reception was held indoors, in an area which isn't wheelchair accessible. My disabled wife and I had to miss out on that part of it. We found out about it on the day, minutes before that part of the wedding was due to start. A little while after, we realized that there actually is a way to get into the area. We just need to go through an inside room which had been set up with tables for dinner. I found my sister and asked them to ask the staff to let us through. Sister forbade us from going through the room, saying she didn't want anyone going into it until it was dinner time, essentially leaving my wife and I sitting alone outside while she and her friends had a chocolate fountain and open bar. I came about this close to giving her a loud piece of my mind and bailing on the wedding. This is the definition of selfish. Bride's sister became pregnant 6 months before the wedding and the bride had a clusterfuck of a meltdown saying her sister had done it on purpose to steal her thunder. Threatened to kick her out of the wedding. Nearly tore that dang family apart. Christ. My mom had a complete emotional breakdown and had to be hospitalized around the same her sister gave birth to her first child. My grandmother accused my mom of stealing her sister's thunder. I work at a bakery and part of my job is to help pair couples with the correct designer for their cake. One bride wanted a cake large enough to feed 500 and she wanted it to float. This multi-tiered cake was going to be filled with fresh berries and custard, covered with buttercream and fondant, and decorated with edible flowers and more fresh fruit. And she wanted us to somehow defy the laws of gravity physics and make it float. Apparently, she had seen a floating cake in an anime show and decided nothing else was acceptable. But when I told her we can't make floating cakes, she threw her coffee on the floor and cried that we were ruining her wedding. Her fiancé ushered her out the door and I never saw either of them again. Yeah, mouse, we're going to need more Bridezilla stories. Nothing wrong with some variety from just normals. Bride got trashed at their after party, not really a reception because they eloped. Then came back to the hotel late at night and cussed out her new husband loudly enough that I could hear it downstairs. You will never be accepted into my life. Butthole. The next morning she was horribly hungover and rude to everyone. Fast forward a week and she be back. The photographer made her look fat in her pictures. No B, you just fat. That's not a Bridezilla. That's just a terrible person. Her poor husband. I'm not a wedding planner but my friend is getting married soon. She planned this huge wedding with 8 bridesmaids, groomsmen, and when she tried to arrange for the bridesmaids to get together and pick out bridesmaids' dresses, 2 of them couldn't make it on the day she picked. She was so upset that they couldn't come on that particular day that she sent out a nasty text to all the bridesmaids and cancelled the big wedding and now is having a destination wedding with just her fiancé and their family. Lucky bridesmaids. My sister threw such a fit at my mother during the wedding dress search that my father offered her a blank check to elope so we don't have to put up with this. She declined and divorced the guy a few years later. Not a wedding planner but worth the highlights. The bride fired the first wedding planner. The bride fired the maid of honor, the one who set the couple up together, and brought her back a few weeks before the wedding. The bride fired the MC groom's best friend and kicked him out of the wedding. The bride told the groom he didn't have time for a bachelor party with only 3 months left before the wedding and flipped out when he was kidnapped for a bachelor party. The groom had a few conversations from his friends telling him to reconsider. 2 bridesmaids nearly boycotted the wedding. They were the bride's sisters. The best man had a shirt on under his tux that said "Don't do it," which he revealed at the reception. One of the speeches was from a sibling who talked about how he looked up to his brother and learned from his mistakes. The best part was she insisted and got them on a television show recording the whole wedding process and it was drama filled the way it was filmed but didn't have anything of the above in it. This was one of my favorites. Don't do it, LMAO. I'm taking notes for my best friend. It was an outside ceremony at a golf course, with an inside reception. About an hour to the ceremony the skies went dark, and storm clouds began rolling in. I tell my outdoor brides we need to call the wedding no later than 30 minutes in advance so we have time to move guests indoors, as well as any other items, flowers, etc. In this case the bride had a beautiful indoor location that was easily used for both ceremony and reception, which is why there was no tent. I suggest to the bride that she move her ceremony inside. She says no, she wants it outside. I show her the clouds. It's Seattle, she says. There are always clouds. Well, yes, but these are storm clouds and you have 200 people sitting outside on a golf course. She won't budge. No amount of reasoning is helping. 20 minutes to ceremony it starts to get windy. Nothing big yet, but this is just more signs that wet weather is upon us. She still won't reconsider. Several guests are seated outside. Many hover inside the reception area because it's cold out now. I tell her this. Tell her last call. Warn her what happens if it rains during the ceremony. She still wants it outside. The ceremony begins. It starts to sprinkle. Bridesmaids are getting wet as they walk down the aisle. Shoes are sinking into the grass. Guests are looking worried. The bride walks down the aisle just as big wind gusts begin. Rain starts to fall in earnest. Guests try and use umbrellas but it is just too gusty. We aren't even 5 minutes into the ceremony when the heavens suddenly open and it pours. Guests start screeching and start moving inside. Ceremony is still happening for the bride, but guests are bailing. Musicians grab their instruments and head inside. The bridal party continue to stand there like nothing is happening, much like the band on the Titanic. There are maybe 20 guests left. Everyone else has bailed. It is an open downpour. Anyone left is just soaked. Officiant is rushing now, though there isn't really anyone left to witness vows. Before they got to the kiss, the lightning began. At that point they finally bailed. The bride and bridal party spent the reception looking like drowned rats. The bride was just ruined. Runny makeup, hair smushed. She had rashes on her skin from being wet all night. Wet lace and heavy ball gowns are not easily worn wet. All the decor that was meant to move inside following the ceremony was ruined. Thousands of dollars on flowers and centerpieces down the drain. Literally. And at the end, hardly anyone witnessed the ceremony at all. And they didn't even get to finish. Bad bride. Late to the party, but our wedding venue booked 2 wedding parties on the same day. No problem. They said we wouldn't overlap. We didn't particularly care anyway. Towards the end of getting our photos done, photographer says to me we're being moved to another part of the garden because this other party was inside and the bride did not want to see another bride on her big day. We didn't give a crap at the time as we were genuinely just very happy to be married, but what a freaking see. That would just prompt me to photobomb the crap out of their day. Not a wedding planner but a wedding guest. So, it was my cousin's groom wedding and he was marrying this very bitchy girl whom no one, except his sister, liked. Bitchy girl hated everything about everyone and liked to be vocal about those things. So, halfway through the reception, I am super bored since I didn't want to be there and only went because my mother insisted. The place is very awkward. No one is dancing and the bride is having a screaming contest with her dad outside. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I notice a woman, very young, sitting at the bride's family table, holding a baby and talking to some guy. I didn't notice her before since the baby was very quiet during the entire ceremony and they sat at the back. I recognize that woman as the bride's 17-year-old sister who BTW was a teen mom and the guy, I assume and later learn, is her boyfriend and baby daddy. Yes, they were still together. Bride comes back, looks at sister angrily, then marches her way to groom's family where she proceeds to crap talk about how her sister was stupid and irresponsible, getting pregnant at 15 had the baby at 16, and how her baby daddy was a complete drunk, useless moron. She is talking so loudly that her sister, the guy and everyone is hearing her. The music was very low. Sister starts crying quietly, hugging the baby who is now anxious. Guy looks ready to kill the bride, and he hadn't touched a single glass of alcohol. Bride's father seems angry and bride's mother goes to sister to try to comfort her. Then bride talks about how her sister is stealing her thunder, making the day all about herself and her mistakes. Bride's father goes to talk to her again. I realize then what they were arguing about, and guy goes to his girlfriend to comfort her as well. Bride leaves to calm herself but everyone can hear her having a tantrum outside. Guy and sister say their goodbyes to her family and a few friends and go home, with sister still crying and guy still comforting her. Later learned that sister and guy actually work when they are not at school to pay for the baby fees. Bride was always jealous of sister because sister is the baby and the favorite daughter. Bride and sister are no longer in speaking terms because of other reasons. TL. DR. Bride got angry because of teen mom sister. Threw a huge fit. Sister and baby daddy left early. Other reasons. It was my brother's wedding, and I was one of the bridesmaids for my sister-in-law. We were taking all those cutie, typical pre-wedding photos between the bride and her bridesmaid, and her parents, when we realized that only the bridesmaid's transport had arrived, and that the car for her and her dad was stuck somewhere. She called up to find out what was happening. Proceeded to scream at the poor guy who was stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Her skin erupted in a red sort of rash that was visible on her chest and her arms, and she screamed that she was not going to get married if she couldn't go in the car she paid for. Half an hour went by. No car for her. We suggested she just come with us. We had a Volkswagen C2 wedding decorated van, and had plenty of space for her and her parents. Her response? No, I can't turn up this late to my wedding. I'm not getting married. After a tense 10 minutes, she got in our van, and we continued with the wedding day. In fairness, a professional driver should have planned for any traffic and shown up way early. I would have had firm words for them too, and a bad Yelp review. My brother was getting married and I was one of his groomsmen. It wasn't even his wife, it was her family that acted like complete C from start to finish. Normally the bride's family throws her a bridal shower. Her family said that's too expensive, so they did nothing. My mother offered the use of her house, paid for all of the food, and at the request of the bride asked that only the ladies of each family attend the event, i.e., guys were not invited. The family of the bride shows up with a party tent that nobody had asked for, literally dropped it in the driveway with no idea or intention of setting it up, and left. I had the pleasure of figuring out and setting up this clown house themed tent that nobody used since the event was held indoors due to inclement weather. Fast forward to the day of the shower. Every single member of the bride's family, men included, show up after being told ladies only, no men. Then the men were confused why they were caroled and told they weren't welcome to eat before the bride and add the burden of their presence to the event. Later the bride's family tried to be about how my mom hijacked the wedding by stepping up when the bride's own family refused to contribute. The wedding day and reception were no better. Again, not a single dime contributed towards either the wedding or reception. But the first people to line up at the bar was the bride's family. They also tried ordering an additional keg on my parents' tab, and they brought freaking Tupperware to take leftovers. After the reception, my parents learned that a full keg had been tapped without their approval. Regardless, they were sent the bill, although a refund was eventually issued. The refund for some reason was sent to the bride's mother, who contributed nothing to the reception or the wedding. My parents asked the manager of the venue for confirmation that refund had been issued and was shown a record of the refund. The check had been cashed, but the bride's mother outrightly denied receiving any such check. To this day, despite literally stealing money, freeloading thousands of dollars worth of food and booze, and contributing nothing, they still be about how my mom hijacked the wedding. This all coming from girls who lived with their parents well into their late 20s. LOL. Went to a friend's wedding where through her Bridezilla ways was not on speaking terms with her soon-to-be mother-in-law. Apparently the mill made some change to her steak sauce or something, and my friend freaked out yelling and made her brother go and get her a Lunchable from the grocery store. She ate a Lunchable at the main table of the reception. Marriage lasted about a year. Not a wedding planner, but I'm former clergy, so let me start off by saying that I was a deacon, fully empowered to officiate weddings, but no one, in my experience, asks the deacon to do a wedding unless they are a family friend. So I was a little shocked and somewhat suspicious when I was approached by this couple. They wanted two things: me to officiate and use of our church. They were only 2 weeks away and their first venue fell through. Alternatively, they would just like to rent the church and they would have a family friend officiate. Unless the family friend just happened to be clergy of the same denomination as us, the latter wasn't an option. As I asked more questions, I became increasingly uncomfortable with the couple. Something was off. Finally, they came out with it. The couple had broken up after the invites had been sent. But the bride was not going to be deprived of her special day of being treated like a princess for some technicality like she didn't have a groom. Deposits were already in place anyway, so they figured they'd throw the big wedding, have the reception, and then go their separate ways. I asked the groom why he would be participating in this farce. The father of the bride, in an apparent effort to give his special princess her special day, was willing to give the groom the honeymoon tickets hotel. So he basically got a vacation to show up and look sincere. The reason why the first venue dropped them was that they didn't want to stage a fake wedding. Neither did we. Good for you for sticking to your beliefs, and a good pickup on the dodgy deal. Was just in a wedding a few months ago. Us bridesmaids had to wear black shoes under our floor-length dresses. Right before we left the hotel to head to the church, one of the bridesmaids' shoes broke. The sole of the shoe separated completely from her toe and dangled. We were trying to find a sewing kit to see if we could rig it, but we had to go. We grabbed what we could. The bridesmaid grabbed another pair of heels that were tan, and went to the limo. We stuffed pins and crap into the shoe to try to make it stay, but one wrong move and the pin would go straight through her toe. We looked at the bride to show her so she can wear the other shoes and she wanted her to wear the black ones. Are you kidding me? The walk down that aisle was like 50 yards. She switched shoes without telling the bride, and I was walking in front of her, so I made sure to walk slow as crap so she could take tiny steps so her shoes wouldn't show. I know what you're going to say. Oh, she was just worried about the pictures. Yeah, we were in no pictures once the ceremony ended. And there goes the friendship. Sailed on. I've heard of walking on fire, water, glass, footpath, but not pins. Especially ones waiting to pierce your foot at any given moment. Right or wrong move. We had a woman who wanted everything and wanted it cheap. We had one of our planners quit suddenly, so this woman had to be transferred to another planner. But this was so early in the planning that it really should not have mattered. But bride thought the stress was enough that she should get everything for free or severely discounted. Now she and the original planner had preliminary pricing for certain items. One of the items, a small flower wall, suddenly changed to a 12x 12 feet flower wall. But not only should the price not be increased for this custom monstrosity, her colors were, wow, we should give it to her for free for the stress. I am not a pushover, and have no pity for those who try to manipulate me. So in the end she rented our wall but had to send pre-made flowers herself, which we would staple to our wall. She cut most of what we were supposed to provide, saying her family will do it instead. Fine with me. I could tell this was someone we wanted minimal contact with. The day comes. She is renting chairs from us for the ceremony, and we are setting up the wall and a couple minor things, as well as stanchions that she rented and arranged, but we're in our truck. The time limits on this space are very tight. It also turns out that this outdoor pavilion becomes a complete wind tunnel during the time she scheduled. She rented the cheap stanchions, so the wind just knocks them all down. The wooden chairs are falling over. No way that flower board will stay up. No amount of sandbagging was going to keep that giant wooden sail from crushing the bride during the ceremony. The family is trying to set up a paper runner and paper deco. I try to get this all to work. Tried putting the chairs along the runner to hold it down, but apparently her dress is so big the aisle is too narrow that way. I sit the family down. They know what's coming, but the bride is the bride and they all fear her reaction. The family comes to the decision that this is not going to work. So since I have to go prep the restaurant for the reception, I tell them I will take their deco and runway and make use of it there, along with the flower wall. I go to the restaurant with my crew, make this happen, and go home. I guess we were lucky that the bride was over an hour late for her 2-hour setup ceremony teardown window. The bride, shockingly, never called to complain about the wall not being at the ceremony, or anything else. I assumed her family talked some sense into her. We did go above and beyond to make what we could work for her, but what she did do was tell the restaurant that all deco is donated to them, including all of our rental items. Luckily the restaurant didn't argue when we said the bride was mistaken and I sent my crew to collect what was ours. That flower wall was the ugliest thing I had seen in my career. I didn't have my crew wear our logo gear that day. I did not want the company associated with that event, or anyone thinking we designed it. Well, now I'm just dying to know what her colors were. Not me, but a relative. A bride went crazy after being told that she couldn't pay for her cake with a net card. Seinfeld voice. Who are these people? My friend is usually easygoing, but she was terrible to me when she was getting married. She was marrying a man as a friend of my husband. They met because they were both in our wedding party. I found out I was pregnant with my first just before she announced her wedding date. I was told by my doctors I was unlikely to get pregnant, so it was a huge deal for me. No one knew. She asked my husband and I to be in the wedding party, so we took her and her future husband to dinner and explained we would love to be in her wedding party, but warned her I would be very pregnant at the wedding. She acted excited at first. Then we went for dresses with the bridesmaids. She made snide comments about me getting rid of it, so I wouldn't be pregnant at her wedding. I could hate another latter. I was sick as a dog and trying not to cry. Also, I am the larger side and made sure I could order my dress 2 sizes bigger as it was not very accommodating to her pregnant body. I could. Apparently, the consultant made fun of me for being fat. I found that out because when my friend tried to defend herself she said she had been defending me, telling me THST only hurt more. They were all going to dinner and I skipped out because I didn't want to harass anymore. Then her bridal shower happened. It was a state over, where we were both from. First off, her maid of honor shook me down for money for the party. We never agreed to that in advance, but I gave in because I wanted to help. I wanted to help set up, but I got there a little late. I had been really sick all morning and had to drive an hour to get there. My parents drove me and begged me to go home and rest. I spent half the party in the bathroom vomiting. I still go there early, but a lot of the work had been done. I stayed and cleaned up. Later, we got into it. At that point, I was done. I had found out there was something wrong with the pregnancy and put on bed rest, and I told her I was done being treated like that. When she tried to say I was there enough for her party, I explained that I went there when I should have been resting, and even at 7 months pregnant I was helping throughout the party. I told her my baby was sick and I wasn't going to be putting myself under that kind of stress anymore. That is when she felt awful. I think she finally saw the bigger picture and we made up. I wasn't pregnant for her wedding. My daughter was born at 29 weeks because she was in distress. We found out she had trisomy 18 and we only had 6 days with her. The wedding was 8 weeks after she died. We attended, but opted out of being in the wedding party. We left during the father-daughter dance because it was too painful, but at that point, people were more understanding. Jesus Christ. I am so sorry you had to go through all of that. I would have quit the wedding at the bridesmaid's dress incident. Frick people like that. Best friend got engaged February. I was asked to be mo. Agreed. She decides on destination wedding. I ask a bunch of questions, mainly if I can book the trip myself. $2,000 one person was her cost, and she freaks out because everyone is complaining of the cost, so releases me from more duties. We don't speak until I get a random message on FBMA inviting me to the bridal shower. I said no. She was offended. We are no longer friends. I believe some destination weddings discount the marrying couple's cost by inflating the package costs to guests. Probably a good call on your part. At my cousin's wedding, her daughter threw a temper tantrum and wanted to stop the ceremony because the DJ played the wrong song as my cousin walked down the aisle. Then again, she was 5, so I think she gets a free pass. Not just the bride. The entire wedding was a disaster. I used to work for a wedding catering business. One time we had a wedding where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. The groom's ex showed up, demanded to be let in, and was eventually escorted out by the cops. The groom later screamed at his mother to get the frick out of here. The bride's brother was cut off after he was noticeably sauced. He proceeded to knock over a stack of glass racks, maybe 5 racks, and break about 8 dozen glasses on the floor in the dining room. Multiple guests had their acid confiscated and a lady vomited and passed out on the dance floor. I miss that job. The all-time standout for Bridezilla was when the couple came together for a music planning meeting in the organ loft. For the processional, the groom-to-be said, "I want Here Comes the Bride." She said, "I'm not coming when you want." They settled, at my suggestion, on trumpet voluntary. My wife did not take my suggestion of Ride of the Valkyries with good humor. Honestly, it would have been kinda epic on an organ that big. I was hired to assist with makeup and dressing. I was 8 months pregnant and had to tie the mother sari. So while I am tying it, the mother tells me I am doing it wrong and wants me to do it her way. I told her that she won't be able to walk if I tie like she is requesting. She starts to get frustrated, so I tie her sari in the way she wants. This woman doesn't know how to tie a sari. She apparently doesn't wear them. So she comes out and starts screaming and yelling at the wedding planner that I don't know how to tie a sari and now she can't walk. She is in tears. So then the planner takes her away and calms her down and tied her sari. This leaves me in the E-room with the other girls, hair and makeup, and the bride. So the bride turns to me and starts saying, "You ruined my wedding day. How dare you make my mother cry on this day? You are a horrible person and are running the most important day of my life." I couldn't help it but I started to laugh and I could stop. It was so dramatic, and it was a sari. Nothing was ruined. I took 10 minutes to fix and the mother would listen about how to put one on. The wedding planner walks in. So the bride started tripping out and screaming, "Get out. Get out. I don't want to see your face." You ruined everything." She started to cry. I laughed even harder and said, "You are in for a surprise in your life if you think a poorly tied sari is the worst thing in the world and you are using it as an excuse to frick your own day up." I turned to the planner, told her to pay me so I could go home and put my feet up. The wedding planner called me the next week to help with another wedding. I said no. At least you never said sorry. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.